All right, well, I say we get this party started. So welcome to all of you to day 5 of the Reset series. And if you are new, we welcome you. And if you are returning, welcome back. We are excited to end this week on a high note right before a holiday weekend. So as we have done all week, we want to start with our Zoom keeping. So please, if you wouldn't mind, just for bandwidth right now, if you can keep your video disabled, and we'll let you know when we want you to enable that again for some exercises. Also, please keep yourself on mute. And Sharon, if you'll wave to the group. Hey, Sharon. Sharon is our expert moderator, and she will be running the chat box and polling if you have any technical issues as we do activities throughout the session. She'll be there to support you. And speaking of polling, we won't be doing any polls today, but we will be using chat. And if you're on your cell phone, when we do chat on Zoom, there's a little 3 dots down at the bottom. You can click there and you can participate in the chat. For those of you who may be calling in on your phone and on your laptop, that's excellent. If you are solely on your laptop, if you can have your smartphone or your phone nearby, we're going to use those today during the session. So make sure that it's on vibrate, but we're going to use those for some engagement today. And just as is customary with the rest of the sessions throughout the week, you will receive a follow-up email after today's session with today's recording, as well as the other 4 recordings from this week. And as a reminder, yesterday in yesterday's email, Sharon sent a handout that we're going to use during this session that has the list of values. If you don't have that nearby, not to worry, we'll have it up on the screen and you can take a screenshot. All right, but if you do have that email from yesterday, if you can locate that PDF that was within that document, which is a list of values, we're going to use that in our session today. So I would like for you to meet the rest of my team. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm Joni Goodman in a moment, but Deanna, would you mind to introduce yourself to the group?
All right. So good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. We are so excited to be here with you all again on day 5. So it's been a joyous experience, and these ladies are just fabulous. So special thank you to each of the facilitators and Sharon. It was a pleasure leading the discussion on Wednesday and Monday, and I'm looking forward to today.
Awesome. Thank you. Summer.
Okay. Hi, everybody. TGIF for sure. And going into this weekend, what a great way to revive ourselves, our souls, our minds, our hearts. And I'm just really proud of all of us for showing up. And I'm talking about all of you that are participating in this. You know, I'm just feel honored and thrilled to be here. And we got to figure out what we're doing next. We got to keep this community going. Maybe we need a vision board session next week or so.
Yeah, awesome. So Arquella, I'm going to have you hold just a moment and we'll have you introduce yourself in just a moment. But for those who are just joining for the first time today, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on the Reset series. So the 4 of us are all facilitators, have our own businesses, and during this pandemic time, we were really struggling with what can we do for ourselves, but more importantly, what can we do to be of service to others? And so Deanna actually spearheaded and reached out to all of us and connected all of us. And that's how the Reset series was born, was really how can we do something with the gifts that we have to be of service to you? So Arquella, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Great. Thank you, Joni. Arquella Hargrove. And I've been having a great time this week. And I want to say happy Friday, right? I'm excited about the end of the week and looking forward to sharing with you all today on trust. And I co-facilitated on Wednesday with Deanna around problem solving. So again, looking forward to sharing this time with you all. And thanks again for coming on.
Awesome. So I also facilitated a session earlier in the week on Tuesday called Embrace. So we started the week reframing, then we moved to embracing, then problem solving to solving, and then yesterday we left empowered, and today is all about trusting ourselves with all of this knowledge and what we're going to do with it and what we're going to be able to do with it. So trust building through vulnerability and courage is where we're at for today's session. So this is Arquella's contact information. Arquella, do you want to give just a little bit of background about what you do as well?
Sure, sure. So I do a couple of things. So I'm, as Joni's mentioned, that we're all facilitators. So I facilitate mainly around leadership development. I do a lot of work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And my background is in human resources management. So a lot of the work is partnering with organizations around their HR strategies. And so that's what the business is focused on.
Awesome. And I am actually a biochemist by trade, and I came to the training talent development space by way of a circuitous route. I actually started my career in a call center. Very quickly mastered that, got involved in training. When I moved into research and development, training was a common thread. And in 2004, that's what I decided I wanted to do full time. So I've worked for 3 different medical device companies and actually had the privilege of working in the Texas Medical Center and doing some clinical training and training surgeons on how to use a robotic surgery medical device, which was super cool. However, I myself felt like a robot and decided that, hey, it's these competency-based essential skills that I really enjoy and am passionate about doing. So in 2016, I honored my entrepreneurial spirit and I started my company where I focus on facilitation, professional development, sales training, and executive coaching. So we are excited to be with you today. And just to kind of get our minds ready, thank you for those of you who are sharing in the chat about your plans for the weekend. I know that this holiday weekend is still unique and different. This is the second holiday I think that we've had during this quarantine. So we're all adapting. So thank you for sharing your plans. We'd like for you to go back to the chat panel now and share with us, how would you describe, and keep it brief, how would you describe a trustworthy leader? So give you a moment. And while you all are chatting, I'm going to ask my colleagues to share as well. So Deanna, how would you share, or how would you share how you would describe a trustworthy leader?
Yeah, so for me, one big piece is just transparency and being real, authentic, genuine. We can go on adjectives, but to me, that's a big deal. Like, I need the person to be real.
Thank you. And Summer?
Summer, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Didn't want you to hear the lawn man in the background speaking of authentic and real and what's going on. I think for me, a trustworthy leader is someone who really walks the talk. So somebody who is following up on their word, doing what they say they're going to do.
Excellent. And Sharon or Arquella, what's going on in the chat? What are we hearing from the others in the chat about a trustworthy leader?
Yeah, there's someone that leads by example, right? So again, going back to Summer, walking the walk, talking the talk, models the behaviors they expect is a big one. That's really so true. I like this one from Jasmine. Transparent, honest, provides constructive feedback. So you know where you stand at all times with that person. Let's see, a leader with actions reflects his or words, and teaching by example. Loyal is a key.
All right.
Very good.
So lots of that talking the talk and walking the walk. It's one thing to talk it, but to live it out is another. And to do that follow up and to have that authenticity and to be forthright and say when you don't know or when you can't share something, right? Especially now when there's all kinds of volatility happening in organizations as far as restructuring and reorganization. And sometimes we as leaders only have so much information that we can share, but being honest about that and saying, you know, when I'm able to, I will certainly give you updates, but this is what I can share right now, instead of sugarcoating it and dancing around it. So thank you for sharing. All right, so this is the dictionary definition of trust, both in noun and verb form. But trust is really built in the very small moments. And this comes from John Gottman's work, and he calls them sliding door moments. And the sliding door moments are the seemingly inconsequential everyday moments filled with the words we haphazardly throw back and forth at each other, accompanied by little evanescent pains, frustrations, joys, and laughter flying through our minds and our hearts, and make or break the most important relationships in our lives. So when we ask somebody how they're doing and they say fine, are they really fine? And it's even more difficult to allow them to open up and share when they're not fine. But it's so important for us to check in with each other now, especially since we are remote working, and communication is always important. It's the foundation of all that we do personally and professionally, but it is even more important now with this distance that we have between us. So any interaction, there is a possibility of connecting with someone or pushing them away, all right? And the moment is not as important as what you do in that moment. If you turn away from that person when they're trying to talk to you about something that's hard, especially now because you yourself aren't equipped to handle it, that is going to erode the trust. So that's why it's really important, the dedication that you've given to yourself this week to do this development work and to be self-aware so that you can hold space for other colleagues, other coworkers, and those folks that work with you. So one of the other honors that I have is that last year, right about this time in June, it was actually December I found out that I was selected, but in June I actually went through Brené Brown's Dare to Lead Facilitator certification. And this comes directly from the book and also from the Dare to Lead program. And this quote by Teddy Roosevelt was actually kind of the birthplace of Dare to Lead. And I'll give you a moment to kind of read through this quote, but I actually learned from one of my clients the other day that this quote is something that when he transitions or moves to a new department or moves to a new organization, this quote is a parting gift that he gives to everyone to really allow them to know that we and he or she chooses to live in the arena. And sometimes there will be moments of what we classify as failure, but who's going to be there for you to help dust you off and rise you up out of these arena moments? And that is where vulnerability is key. And it is actually the most accurate measure of courage. And this one is really poignant here from this quote. Brené says, if you're not in the arena, then I'm not interested in or open to your feedback. If you're not willing to get in there and be vulnerable and have your face marred and have those arena moments, then I'm not interested or open to your feedback, because I need somebody who's going to be real, authentic, and say, it's not always easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's tough sometimes. And sometimes I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick myself up or how I'm going to be able to pick myself up. So it's not the critic who counts. It is the man in the arena that points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. So here are our purpose and objectives for today's session. We're going to talk about daring leadership and how it requires 4 skill sets. We're going to introduce you briefly to those. And it was interesting in the research because it was first thought either you are a daring and courageous leader or you're not. Like it's innate. You're either born with it or you're not. But her research found that these 4 skill sets are actually teachable, measurable, and observable. And then we want to understand what the role is of courage and vulnerability, and talk about our behaviors and what it's like to identify those and actually live into those values, and then recognize what gets in the way of courageous leadership. And I think you'll be shocked to hear what that is. All right, so this is an exercise that I'm going to have each of you do today as a personal reflection. However, I would like for you to think about after this session, using this with your team, using this with your colleagues, using this with your direct reports as a way to start your meetings. So permission slips are a way to start building trust. And it is a great way to do what we call container building, to build that safe container, that safe environment, that safe space for people to share. So what we're going to ask you to do in a moment, Arquella and I are going to both model this and share our permission slips with you. But what we're going to ask you to do in a moment is, what is it you need to give yourself permission to do, to feel, or to not do in order to be able to show up fully for this reset trust session today? And so for me personally, I want to have pride in myself and the work that I'm doing. I want to open up and share vulnerably. And as a recovering perfectionist, number 3 is the hardest for me. Know that done is better than perfect. And I want to remain open-minded with what's shared. And then also another difficult one for me is to be fully present. We all have so much going on, especially leading into a holiday weekend, but I want to give myself permission to be fully present in this next hour. Arquella, how about you?
Great. Thank you, Joni. For me, I'm giving myself permission to listen, actively listen. Again, during this time, and even working and collaborating with Joni and Anna and Summer, again, just listening without judgment, just being totally open and being curious for me, and just leaving that space for that, being vulnerable in the moment. Years ago, it was very hard for me to be vulnerable with other people. And so now it's, I'm able to do that freely, and then be ready to change. Definitely, as I'm hearing different things that I'm able to apply back to what I do daily, I'm wanting to make sure that I'm making that change, and then give up myself. I want to be a resource to others. I want to give back because there's limitless opportunities. And so for me, it's just being that vessel to others.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
So this is your moment now. And if you want, you can share this in the chat, but it's not required. Just take a scrap sheet of paper, whatever you have handy. And what is it that you want to give yourself permission to do, or to not do, or to feel in order to be able to fully show up for this trust reset experience today?
Joni, as we're waiting, if we can ask Deanna and Summer to share their permission slips.
Yes, please.
For sure.
Yourselves permission to do.
For sure. So, Arquella, Jenny, there's a couple things that come to mind along the routes that what you ladies were talking about. But for me is letting go. So I'm a control freak and discipline project manager. And so that I got to let that go. The other thing is to be present. We've talked about this throughout the week about being distracted and having all this stimulation come in. So just really being present and focused with the topic on hand. And then, the other piece is that fumbles, right? When the ball fumbles, it's okay. It's all right. It's not going to be perfectly packaged. It's all right. So I forget that sometimes.
Good.
Thank you.
Summer.
Wow. So my permission slip is to allow myself the time this weekend for self-care. And let go of all the chores that got pushed off until the weekend, and actually just let go of those and enjoy the time with my family, not worry about some dishes in the sink perhaps, or some laundry that's piled up. So that's a big one. And then also a permission slip to delegate. I have a hard time just delegating. And after my session yesterday, I have to recognize that's also empowering for others. So I need to stop enabling and delegate so other people can be empowered.
Awesome. Sharon, are we seeing anybody sharing in the chat?
We have a lot of people sharing. We have permission to say no. Love that one. Forgive myself.
So hard.
Actively listen and not listen to respond. There's so many great ones here. Live with purpose.
Awesome. Well, I hope that this allows you to anchor yourself and root yourself in this time today, but also to use this to be able to root yourself in opportunities over the weekend, when you get back to work next week with your team, because this is what starts to build that trust that we were talking about. And some of those sliding door moments, this is a sliding door moment. So these are the 4 skill sets that I mentioned that are teachable, measurable, and observable. And we're just gonna dip our toe in the water to the 4 of these. This is actually to go through the full program and to become Dare to Lead trained. It's a 16-hour program, and that's actually being revised. And gonna get beefed up, possibly be 24. But the 4 skills are rumbling with vulnerability, living into our values. Sharon, would you mind to make sure everybody's mute, please? Thank you.
I took care of it.
So, living into our values, braving trust, and learning to rise. So if this were so easy to be vulnerable and courageous, then why don't we do it? Well, here is a laundry list of reasons as to why we don't do this, why it's hard for us to be courageous, is why it's hard for us to be vulnerable and therefore build that trust. So we're not going to go into detail on these, but you can take a look at the list of we don't have those tough conversations. During my embrace session earlier this week, we talked about emotions, the touchy-feely stuff. And so fears and feelings are right below that. We don't have conversations about that stuff. And now we've been presented with an opportunity to do that given the pandemic situation. But there are many opportunities in the past and many opportunities that will come as far as when there is a reorganization, when there is a leadership change. All of those are times when we have emotions that come to the surface, when we have grief that comes to the surface. So lack of innovation. Arquella mentioned that she does a lot of work in diversity and inclusion. So obviously there's a need for that because it's a barrier to us to be courageous. And then shame and blame, I mean, that's a whole afternoon in and of itself on that. And then gauzy values, which we're going to talk about our values and living into them so that they aren't so gauzy, and then perfectionism as well. So we talked about the definition of trust, and then I had all of you share what a trustworthy leader is like. So the definition of a leader in terms of the Dare to Lead material is a leader is anyone who takes the time to discover and develop the potential in people. All right, so the key word from this sentence is time, right? That's something that none of us have a surplus of. Even during this pandemic, when we were all in quarantine, it was hard to take the time to do these things because we weren't able to focus. We had so many other things that were taking up space. So taking that time to discover and develop the potential in people. All right, so courage and vulnerability go hand in hand with trust. And vulnerability is the emotion that we experience during times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's not about winning or losing. And it is actually having the courage to get down in that arena and get marred up when we cannot control the outcome. So I want you to reflect on this question for a moment. As you think about what you do in your work, can you think of anything that you do in your job that doesn't involve some level of uncertainty, risk, or emotional exposure? I don't think so. If I gave you a moment to think about it and you thought about everything that you did throughout the day, there's not a whole heck of a lot that doesn't involve some level of uncertainty, that doesn't require you to take some risk, and that doesn't expose you emotionally. All right, so we are going to do an exercise in vulnerability. All right, so at this point in time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, all right, and I'm going to ask that everyone enable your video. All right, and I promise I'm not gonna make you do anything crazy, but just humor me here. And let's do an exercise in vulnerability. All right, so enable your webcam. And if you remember the image on the screen that we saw, it was of a child laughing. All right, So what I would like for you to think about, and I know it's been tough for us to do, but laughter is the best medicine. I want you to think about a moment where you were absolutely tickled to death. I mean, you had that deep belly laugh. Maybe you had tears that were streaming. You laughed so hard that you cried. What was it? Where were you? Who were you with? What were you observing? I want you to really embody and think about that moment. All right. And I want you to also find your mute button, and I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves, because we're going to transport ourselves back to that moment. And on my count of 3, we are going to laugh like we were right there in that moment. All right? Are we ready? 1, 2, 3.
This is so silly.
It is absolutely silly. Absolutely silly. Absolutely silly. All right, if you can hit your mute button again, keep your video on. All right. So would you believe that one of the most vulnerable things for us to do is to experience joy in front of another person? All right. So I know that this felt silly. Why did it feel silly? Because we probably don't do it often enough. And one of the reasons why we don't experience joy is because what if somebody else is having a really bad day and we're trying to have a joy-filled moment and we don't seem like we're empathetic to what's going on with them? And so then we feel like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Or even if we don't know what's going on with them, we feel like, oh my gosh, you know, I can't possibly be happy because, you know, misery loves company. Misery is easy to find. It's happiness and joy that are difficult. All right. Are we ready to take it to the next level? Okay. Keep your video on. Keep your mute button on. Okay. And so now we are going to dance. All right. Like you're in the car, like you're in the shower and nobody's watching. All right. We are going to dance. Okay. So in a moment, I am going to put on some music. All right. And on my count of 3 is when the music is going to start. And I want you to get your groove on. All right. Are we ready? I mean, who doesn't love them some Whitney Houston now? I mean, come on. Now, let me tell you, that was about 30 seconds, all right? And what you have just done in that 30 seconds is you have changed your body chemistry, all right? Those feel-good hormones, that prolactin, that beta-M-lactin, here's the biochemist coming out in me, that dopamine, this will stay with you for at least 4 hours. That's 30 seconds of dancing, all right? But my goodness, did that take a little vulnerability to do that? Even on the screen, we're all on video, we could all see each other. That was still a really big exercise in vulnerability. So I'm curious for my colleagues to share, and give me just a moment to get the screen back up here. Deanna, what was that experience like for you?
Okay, so I gotta admit, at the beginning it felt a little funny, but I love the song, so so then it became easier. What threw me, Joni, is when you said 30 seconds, and you said that that lasted for 4 hours. Yeah, I gotta start doing that every day.
Yeah.
All it takes is for us to go in the bathroom stall and put in our AirPods and get our groove on.
Exactly. And another 30 seconds for the remainder of the day, and I'm good.
But it's even better if you do it in front of, I mean, can you think about starting off your team meetings with that? I mean, come on. It's even better if you do it in front of somebody else. So Summer, how about you? What was that like for you?
Well, I've come all week long dancing. I've been trying to get you guys to dance since Monday. I've been dancing. So I'm all for putting myself out there. But actually, I know the benefits, the physiological benefits, how just movement alone changes your state. So it's incredibly important that when we are sitting, now we are Zooming all day long, that we do take those energy breaks, because what it does to our shifting our mindset, opening our hearts to new possibilities is really a key factor. And it's just movement, and it does bring so much joy.
Yes. So Arquella, before you share, I want to invite everybody on the line, if you wouldn't mind, to share in chat. What was that experience like for you? And Arquella, I'll go ahead and have you share while they're typing in.
Yeah, no, for me, it definitely felt good. I love music. You were asking, what's your zone? What's your song that gets you in the zone, right? And so I have a theme word for the year, but I also have a theme song. And so it's like every day I need that in my ear in order to make sure I'm focused and, as we say, in the zone.
Yes.
I felt really good and refreshing.
Awesome. Sharon, what are we hearing in the chat?
Oh, lots of great comments. It was liberating, energizing, joyful. It felt so good. It was so much fun. Felt like they exhaled. Lots of great feedback on that. Just what we needed.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you all. Pat on the back, high fives, whatever, to all of you for being vulnerable with one another, because that's not easy. All right. And believe it or not, that is a skill set that we can teach. So Rumbling with Vulnerability, if any of you have read the book, or if you want to get the book, Dare to Lead, it is 2/3 of the book is Rumbling with Vulnerability. And so a rumble is defined as this. It's a discussion, it's a conversation, or it's a meeting that is defined by committing to be vulnerable, doing what we just did with one another, to stay curious and generous, and to stick with the messy middle of problem identification and solving. It's not always clean, right? Sometimes it's pretty messy. We gave you some tips on Wednesday for problem solving, but then to take a break and circle back. Whenever something didn't go so well and the meeting didn't end just the way you wanted to, or people left kind of in a huff, circle back. Sometimes we give our kids a timeout, sometimes it's us that needs the timeout, right? And to be fearless in owning our parts and listen with the same passion with which we want to be heard. Okay, this is a pretty big definition, as is vulnerability, all right? Hence why it's 2/3 of the book. Now, we defined what a leader is. Now, what their actions should be is to excavate the unsaid and remove the barriers to good work. We talked about some of those barriers to courage in the beginning of the session. And so it's a leader's job to help spearhead excavating those. So the choice is yours. What are you going to do? Are you going to continue to lack the courage and vulnerability to remove some of those barriers? Or are you going to get down in the arena and get in the messy middle and dust yourself off to be able to be the type of leader that you need to be for yourself, that you need to be for your team and for your colleagues? Now, I mentioned in the beginning that what gets in the way of courageous and daring leadership, most of you probably think it's fear. It's not. It's armor. All right, so we have our armored heart. And here are some of the ways in which we armor up that prevent us from being courageous and vulnerable. Perfectionism. I shared in my permission slip, done is better than perfect. As a recovering perfectionist, this is a daily battle for me. Scarcity. So saying to myself, I'm not enough. All right, so these are the little voices, the little tapes that sometimes we get on press play. We don't even press play, but it's an automatic play. It's an ant that that Summer shared yesterday, an automatic negative thought. All right, so scarcity. Always knowing. So being right is more important than getting it right. Cynicism. I bet we've got some cynics on the line. Cynicism is laced with fear, and it's not just wearing something that says, "Hi, I'm afraid." It is, "I'm tough and salty because I'm really cynic over what's about to happen here." And then this one is a little bit of what I like to call old school leadership, power over. So instead of power with or power to or power through, it's power over. That's the way we armor up. Weaponizing fear. So the company is furloughing a bunch of people. The company is laying off people. I'm here for you to check in with, but not really being there. All right. And weaponizing that fear. I hold knowledge that you want to have, but I'm not going to share it with you. I'm going to keep that fear. And then a big one is hustling for our worth, looking for validation, trying to get those promotions, being hung up on titles. People should be able to know what their values are and to be able to state those and actually live into those. And so we're going to move to that next. So the first skill set was rumbling with vulnerability. And here are all of the things that we have been talking about as far as some of the barriers that get into the way. So the left side are things that get in the way of vulnerability. And the right side of the screen are the results of being vulnerable. All right. So we did an exercise with the laughing. That's the love, joy, and belonging. That takes vulnerability to do that. To the shame, the scarcity, the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty, that can be a result of not being vulnerable. All right. So you can't get to courage without rumbling with vulnerability. And in fine print there, it says embrace the suck. All right. So the session that I did earlier in the week was titled Embrace, and it was all about embracing our emotions, some of which are not favorable and some of which are favorable, embracing when we are joy-filled and happy. But we also have to embrace the fact that life as we knew it is different. All right, going to the grocery store, going to the hair salon, going back to the office or not going back to the office, working remotely, homeschooling kids. We have to embrace that and honor all of our thoughts and feelings in order to get to courageous leadership and being able to rumble with vulnerability. So the second skill set is living into our values. Arquella, I'm gonna punt it over to you.
Great, thank you, thank you, thank you. So one thing that I want to ask, and you can certainly type it in the chat box. I have been in many offices, and you all have probably seen those posters on the wall that teamwork, you know, makes the dream work, or integrity or trust. And a lot of times in some of those workspaces, they have the posters on the wall, they have their core values. However, they're not living into those values. So they're not treating each other right. They are not communicating effectively. The leaders are not walking the walk or talking the talk. It's just those posters are posters. They're just hanging there. And so what we want to really talk about and have you all share back with us is how do we operate, you know, make sure that we're operating into those values that are going to benefit ourselves personally and professionally. And so we're going to ask you all to give us some feedback around values. One thing that I like to do with leaders is to give them a stack of values cards, and they lay out all the values, they have them before them, and then we go through several rounds where they get to their top 3 values. First, when Summer was talking about yesterday, first is kind of self-awareness. They have to be aware of their own values. Then we want them to get involved and understand the values of their employees. That way they know how to recognize them, they know how to appreciate them, and they know how to interact and engage. And so that's what we really want to stress around values, is that first, we want to make sure that we're living our values. As I mentioned earlier, I think someone said on the call yesterday that they set a theme word for themselves, and I do the same every year. And so I look at my own values and I want to know what's that word that I want to live by this year that's going to guide me in everything that I do, and that's going to be before me every day. And so I think that's really helps us to operate more efficiently and effectively. So Joni, if we can go to the next. So as you can see, we have a list of values here, and I believe Sharon had posted or uploaded the document into the chat box as well. And so what we want you to do here is to take a look at the list of values, because we're going to do an exercise in just a moment and have you to share your values with us. But take a look at the list here. I want you to think about your own personal values and what you stand for, and then how you want to live this out every day as you're interacting, again, personally and professionally. One of the things I like, there's at Google, they have, it's called the Project Aristotle. And they were thinking about how do they want their teams to work together, right? How do they want to make sure they were operating in their values, that they had this great culture. But one of the things that really, when you think about this Project Aristotle, was making sure that our people was having equality in their conversations, and that everyone had an opportunity to get their voice into the conversation, as well as making sure that the team was working effectively together, and that no one seemed like they were not being heard or that someone was overpowering them. And so really taking a look at that, because a lot of times companies, less than 10% of companies really live into their values. And so we want to really kind of hear from you all around this area. Joni, are we ready to? Yes. Cool. So choose one or two of those values based on your beliefs that are most important to you. So think about, what's those top two that I live by, I can live by every day. And then what we want you to do is we want you to, in just a moment, we're going to do a polling where you'll have a chance to pull out your phone or on your computer, where you're going to share those. But while you're doing that, just ask yourself these questions here on the screen. Does this define me? Who I am? What do I want to do? How do I want to be viewed by others? 2, is this who I am at my best? Right? When you see me, this is who you get, right? I don't change whether I'm in front of you or I'm outside of where you are, but who I am at my best. And then 3rd, is this a filter that I use to make hard decisions, right? And so I'm going to share, Joni and I are going to share our values. And so when I share my values, to see and know that that's how I make my decisions. And so we want to make sure that you pick 2 values that you truly live every day. And as I said, I keep those before me daily, because those are reminders for me of how I'm going to show up every day, both personally and professionally.
All right, I'm going to flip back so you can take a screenshot of this if you don't have that handout. And
Yes.
then I'm going to ask that you grab your smartphone as well. And this is where we are going to use those for you to actually share with us what your values are. So give me just a moment to bring up that screen. I'll let you take a screenshot of this.
Joni,
Or refer to that handout. Yes?
let me just pop in one moment. It looks like there's a little line slashed across
Yes, I'm trying to clear that.
before they take that.
There we go.
Thanks. Now,
Yes.
thank you.
Yep, there we go. All right. Okay, so as you are identifying your values, I'm going to ask you to pick up your smartphone and open up your browser and go to menti.com. Okay, it's up at the top of the screen, MENTI.com. And Sharon's going to put that in the chat for us as well. And then when you get there, you will enter this code that's on the screen, and I'll read that out to you as well. So the code you will enter is 370032, and it will ask you to type in your name and what your values are. Awesome.
And just ignore the code that's already there and just start typing in the new code.
Yes. So we have a couple of people who have put their values in the chat, but if you can try to go to menti.com and type in the code and enter that.
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you.
Seeing those pop up on the screen here. Great. Keep them coming.
Great. Good.
Cool. And these will keep scrolling as they come in. Awesome. Seeing some great words come across the screen here.
Yes, it's great.
Give it just about 30 more seconds. All right, great. Very cool.
Great.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and flip back. So lots of great words that came across the screen. And the next thing that we want to do is really share with you what it looks like to live out those values. All right. So my top two values are authenticity and gratitude. And so one of the privileges that I had was to be the president of the Association for Talent Development chapter last year. And this exercise was actually an exercise that I did with my board about mid-year. And we talked about our own personal values and how those aligned to the values of the chapter, and how we could really personally live those out, then extend that into doing what we wanted to do with the chapter and for our members. And so as a parting gift at the fall conference 2 years ago, I gave each one of the board members a padfolio, a leather padfolio that had their names and their top two values, so that it could be a good reminder for them to live those out. And that was me living out my value of expressing my gratitude and appreciation for them doing that and modeling that as they were on the board. And something unexpected happened. This gentleman right here, the third from the left, is Adam Malata, and he was our vice president of finance. And you know, he's kind of, I mean, he definitely participated, but didn't share a whole lot personally throughout the year. And during this time, just after these padfolios were given to them in September, his grandmother unfortunately passed away. And so the chapter sent a nice peace lily to him. And then I received this note that is on the screen that said, "The speech I delivered at my grandmother's rosary and again at the funeral was delivered from the great portfolio you provided to us with our personal values, mine of family and responsibility. Before walking up to the podium, I read and reflected on those words from the portfolio, and it absolutely helped give me the strength to deliver the eulogies with confidence. Thank you for making those gifts. A number of people asked me about the portfolio, and I was proud to share with them how that came about. They were impressed with the organization, the leadership, and the activity of selecting and focusing on the two words that most represent our own personal values." And so this was like, it just literally brought me to tears that I had no idea that doing this would have such an impact. And further, he was up to be a second term, to serve as second term of VP of Finance. And because of his value of family and that he travels a lot for work, he chose to step down. He is still a director for us, but honoring and living into that value. So this is just an example how you keep those in front of you and you live those out every day. Arquella, how about for you?
Yes, my two values that I live by every day are giving back and collaboration. And so I shared earlier in the week my quote that probably is before me every day, but as I'm working and engaging with others, is I just want to collaborate and to be a resource for others. And that's what we are, the four of us on this Reset series. We came together to collaborate because there's power in numbers, and it's power in just to do things not alone, but with other people for the greater good. And also when we think about our values and living those out, I like to see it where we see the values being lived out through interviewing process, through performance management process, even through how people are managing their team members. And so for me, it just goes hand in hand with that. Daring leaders. Before we go further, I would love to hear or ask Summer and Deanna if they could share their 2 values with us.
Sure. I'll go first. I think the 2 that are my very top are truth and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And my family knows it. I'm all about the truth no matter what. It supersedes everything that I do. So that and aligning that with my connection, because I know that when we are living our truth, we have a greater, deeper sense of connection with ourselves, with a higher power, with the universe, and certainly with each other. And that really is my guiding principle to every decision that I have to make, especially the hard decisions. A lot of times when we are making hard decisions that, just are tough to make, if we align back to our values, I always find comfort in that. And that's where I find my own personal empowerment.
Thank you. Thank you. Deanna, did you want to share your
Yeah, for sure. So my 2 are purpose and meaning, kind of go hand in hand, and then commitment. So purpose and meaning for me really speaks to me in my work, with my clients, with my family. If it's what's the real reason we're doing this? What's the real action, the real decision? What's behind that? And that really is a driving force for me in actions and decisions I take with whoever. And then commitment, say-do ratio is a real big deal for me myself, and I try to live that out. So I want people to know that, they can count on me and that I'm committed, I'm trustworthy, and I expect that the same. So that say-do ratio is commitment, in other words, is big for me.
Very good. Thank you. Love this quote by Brené Brown: is daring leaders who live into their values are never silent about hard things. You're going to speak up and you're going to make sure you do the right thing at all times, no matter the consequences. So I love this quote.
Thanks, Sarquella. And so you shared your values. I encourage you to take that next step and put those in front of you and think about, how am I living those out every day in my life? And some people always ask the question, well, do you mean personal or professional values? There's no difference. All right. The third skill set is braving trust, hence what we're talking about today. And what she found in the research is that trust is one of those big gauzy words that most people, if you say, I trust you, or let's have where do we stand with trust, that can cause people to shut down. And if you start a conversation with it, they tune out, especially if the trust is not there. So a new acronym that you can add in place of trust is braving. And what that does is it immediately takes us out of our limbic brain into something that we can work with and actually have a rational thought process about it. And so braving is an acronym for boundaries. Emotions are okay, behaviors are not. So we can talk about those emotions, but if you're going to have a retaliation type of reaction, that's not appropriate, and we need to talk about it. Reliability, that's what many of you shared as far as talk the talk and walk the walk. Do what you say you're going to do. Accountability, don't blame and finger point. Take accountability when you do something that maybe wasn't the right thing, or you did something in place of someone else. Own up to that, even when it's hard. And then the vault, this is a critical one. Do not share information that is not yours to share, all right? If somebody confides in you, and unless they give you permission to talk about that, it's not yours to share, all right? Integrity speaks for itself, but it is having courage over comfort. And then non-judgmental, so don't judge people about what they're doing, and don't judge yourself, all right? And then generosity, we could spend a day talking about this one, but this is assuming positive intent, all right? So this is another great quote poster: clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So being clear about what it is that is expected, because if you're not, that is being unkind. And then the fourth skill set we really covered in the embrace session, but it is learning to rise. And that is the importance of talking about our emotions and dealing with grief and acknowledging that as well. We cannot rise unless we deal with and talk about those things. So who we are is how we lead. Self-awareness and self-love matter. So this is a reminder of the 4 skill sets. And in the workshop, we dive a lot deeper into these. I just whet your appetite on each one of them. But the last exercise that I want to leave you with is the square squad. All right, we started with permission slips, and the last exercise is the square squad. So we need trust to be vulnerable, and we need to be vulnerable in order to build trust. So write the names of people whose opinions really matter to you within your square. And it's a 1 inch by 1 inch square, all right? So think about what you learned from this process when you do it and identifying who belongs in your square squad. So here are some of the names of the folks that are in my square squad, and here are pictures of them. All right, and yes, my little 7-month-old Gertie is in my square squad. She hears a lot. Arquella, tell us about your square squad.
Yeah, these are just a few people in my square squad, but definitely have a wide network of folks. But yes, these are some of the folks who are in my square squad. And then, of course, their pictures. But family, of course, is front and center for me.
And there's your pictures.
There's my square squad. Some of them.
Yes, yes, awesome. All right, so these are the trust building tools that we're going to leave you with today. Sharon will post these in the chat, but we'll also send these in the follow-up communication for you. And here's another great quote. Integrity is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy, and choosing to practice our values rather than simply professing them.
Mm-hmm.
So Arquella, you want to take us through the closing exercise here?
Yes, definitely. This is one of my favorite exercises to close with. And so just thinking about one word that just kind of sums up how you're feeling about going through the experience today and this week. And we're going to go back to menti.com and just share that one word for us around that aha moment from the trust session today. So one word that sums it up for us.
Right, and this, if you go back to the same session that you were in, you won't have to enter the code again.
Mm-hmm.
If you just open that browser back up, it should already be there for you. If not, the code is 370032.
Yes, so menti.com, and then again, the code that Joni just shared, 370032. One word to share your aha moment from today's session. I love it. Integrity, vulnerability, peaceful, values, knowledge. Encouraged. Awesome. Honorable. Centered. Nice.
This is the coolest platform.
I know. I love word clouds.
Keep them coming.
Gorgeous.
Yes. And vulnerability, and it's the larger the word, it means that a number of you have put the same word in. So that's why it's kind of front and center there, vulnerability.
As is values. Values is also pretty big
Values,
as well.
yeah, that's another one. Wisdom, that's great.
Bravery, brave, I see that. Courage, energizing.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool. All right, so we are at the top of the hour, but really want you all to think about what's going to be an action you want to take as a result coming through the session this morning or this afternoon that you're going to focus on over the next 30 days. So just really setting an action for yourself. And as we are closing out, if you want to, you can definitely share that with us in the chat box. But we'd love to know what your action step is going to be as a result of coming through the session today, and what that's going to be for yourself as well. So making sure that you write that out for yourself and just continue to focus on what that looks like. What is it that you want to start, stop, or do differently? Great. I love it. Read, dare to lead. Thank you, Alexandra. Listen without judgment. That's awesome. But yeah, just setting an action or an intention for yourself. Trust others with my projects. I love that one.
Easier said than done. Yes.
Yes. Baby steps.
That's right. That's right. But we're
Clarify
going to
my,
go ahead.
my top 5 values and then update my vision board. This
Oh,
vision
good.
board coming up. I like it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Nice.
Well, in closing, we want to thank all of you so much for attending today, and those of you who have been loyal attenders for all 5 sessions this week. If there is anything at all that the Reset team can do to support you, here is our contact information. This will also be included in today's follow-up email. Please reach out. We are more than glad to help and support you in your efforts. And as is customary for each session, in the upper right-hand corner, if you can pull your smartphone out again and open up the camera and just point it towards this QR code in the upper right-hand corner. We would love to hear your feedback on today's session, or if there is anything from the week that you forgot to share or you want to share, we would love your feedback. And also listed here, that's also in the email every day, is our offerings that are certainly available in this day and age virtually, as well as in person. If there is anything that we can do to help you continue your development or your team's development, we are more than glad to do that for you. So thank you all so much.
Be sure to link in with us.
Yes.
Yes.
Have a wonderful weekend. Have a great holiday. And remember to take really, really good care of yourself and to do what you mentioned was a trustworthy leader and walk the walk, talk the talk.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you
Stay
all.
safe out there.
Yes, definitely.